Hello, this vid is on the Anglo-Saxon powers and Islam. Can we ever coexist peacefully? Well, let me take the case of Australia. Australia has troops committed in Afghanistan and it did help in Iraq as well. The Australians are still, in a sense, a kind of postmodern power, but they're also still on the frontiers of of the Pacific. If you look at their geography, they are right next to the world's largest Muslim country, Indonesia. Now, Indonesia, as the world's sixth largest army, is Western trained and British and American equipped. And until the fall of Suharto, um, Indonesia itself was held an iron grip over the area between Southeast Asia, Java, and Malaysia. And of course, um, not only were the British in Malaysia fighting a communist insurgents, they were also fighting Islamic insurgents from Indonesia, and a threat of an Indonesian invasion, which did actually occur and was fought back. Now, this was all from the retreat of empire of the European powers. Now, of course, the European Union is the world's largest economy and has tremendous power, but is a regional bloc because it is against extreme nationalism or extreme globalism, okay, which I'll cover in another vid on organised crime and terrorism. Okay, that's part of it. Globalization also encompasses global movements of terror, which are chiefly in the minds of most people is Al Qaeda, although there are others. Now, why is it that the Islam is such a diverse religion? Okay, the Australians, of course, are worried about any Indonesian invasion, and that's why they maintain a very strong navy and a very strong army, and very well equipped and well trained army for their size of their nation and the amount of the percentage of their nation involved in the military is quite high, and this has been historically so. The chief Anglo-Saxon power in that region, being surrounded by Southeast Asian powers in the ASEAN trade bloc. Now, this includes some of the world's top economies, such as Malaysia, Java, Indonesia. The chief Anglo-Saxon power in the world, though, although I would argue that it is not an Anglo-Saxon power because its political and business elite are mostly of non-Anglo-Saxon extraction, is the United States, of course, Canada, the UK, of course, but that is part of the European Union, so it doesn't have quite the free hand it had when it had the empire. But can we ever? The Anglo-Saxon powers are normally associated with limited democracy, liberal open societies, freedom of expression within limits. There are, of course, limits said because of racism, because of the need to maintain human rights, so you can't defamate someone's character, etc. Now, Muslim society is more gauged to the defamation of the book of the Quran, of the Holy Quran, and so the individual is less important. There is also much more tribalism in the Islamic cultures. We take, for instance, in Iraq or Afghanistan or even Pakistan. Those are tribal societies. So is tribalism the problem, or is Islam the problem? I would say Islam is not the problem, although some sects of Islam are, and that would be chiefly Wahhabism. The other problem, for Islam particularly, is the Anglo-Saxon concept of manifest destiny, and this is linked in with religion as well. The Anglo-Saxon powers believed they had a right to rule the world because they were chosen by God to do so through Christianity, and Christianity leads back to Judaism. Now, although Judaism is actually closer to Islam than it is to Christianity, the Anglo-Saxon powers took from the Bible the concept of a chosen people, or a superhuman people from the Bible, which came from the idea of the Israelis or Jews as a chosen people. Now, this concept is also in Islam. Islam also believes that they're a chosen people. When you speak about the Muslim Ummah, which is the global community of different Islamic faiths, the chief ones among those would be Sunni Islam, which is most of the world, and Shia Islam, which is basically Iran. And I've done a video on Iran. Now, we are fighting a global war against terrorism, and it's not the religion that we're fighting a war against, it's the tactics of terrorism, of terrorist movement, that's chiefly supported by one major family, and those are billionaire terrorists of the Bin Laden family. That is Al-Qaeda is the front of them, okay? And as we saw in the Bali bombings, the gentle Islam of Malaysia, of Indonesia, can be challenged by this Wahhabi extreme Muslim terrorist interpretation of Islam. So again, are the Anglo-Saxon and Islamic cultures compatible? Even though I believe that the Islamic faith itself is not the problem, it can be secular, it can be democratic, okay, as we've seen with the protests in Iran. But Iran is an Indo-European culture that simply has the Islamic faith. It's not a tribalist culture, and it's the tribalist culture of both Israeli Zionism and of Wahhabist and Sunni and Muslim Islam in the Middle East. That's the problem. It's the Middle Eastern culture, and those things are not compatible. Neither Israeli Zionism is compatible with Anglo-Saxon or the European Union's values, nor is Wahhabi Islam compatible with European and Anglo-Saxon values. Firstly, there must be a change in Islam that it allows change, that it recognises an interpretation of the Quran that allows for human rights, for democracy. If there was such a perfect society from the original prophet, then surely that would take the form of a society that could express such perfection, and Muslim society does not express that perfection. That's the problem. Despite some very strong ethics in Islam. Now, there is a problem, of course, with the Anglo-Saxon powers incurring into Muslim territory. Well, Muslim territory has fluctuated over the centuries, and of course it is spread out throughout Central Asia, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, Africa, parts of southern Spain. That cannot be, once a culture has been there and been removed, it cannot then claim those territories. The Germans had to be moved out of East Prussia and Danzig. They lost those areas, and now Germany is in its unified territory. They've given up on that, and so that's what Islam must fundamentally understand, where its borders are.